I found an image at a flea market. It's this painting, this reproduction here that's sitting against that counter there. It is laden with glitter, the old kind of glitter, the metal glitter. They don't sell in craft stores metal glitter anymore, but it's lined with this metal glitter. The one I have here sits in a rough. It's got to be handmade with a knife. Somebody has carved this frame. It's a reproduction of an image. This one has tattered edge under the glass. If you take a moment after the service and peer at this little piece here. It's a figure cherished by many Mexican and Mexican Americans, the majority Catholic. So why did this one catch my eye that day, and why could I not take my eyes off of it? I had kind of a crisis of faith of sort. I mean, if I love this, does that make me Catholic now? Does it mean if I love this and I want it at my house and on my wall, does that mean I'm appropriating an image from another culture? Am I a bad person? Who says Unitarian Universalism is an easy faith tradition? I don't know about many of you, but I am often caught in thought storms just like that. Although there are many theories about the origin of Our Lady of Guadalupe, it's really baffling to say the least. So I took this home that morning, and then I began researching the history of this image. The slide above has the woman in the middle, and the story is depicted in tiny images. You can't see them on this one. This one has 6 images. This here has 4 in the corners. So she's in the middle, and there's the story about her is all around the outside. But before we get into specifics, let me pause to tell a story. It's about 2 faith traditions encountering one another. One is monotheistic, and the other is polytheistic. Mono meaning one God, polytheistic meaning several gods. So I'm bringing this up because we're talking about a UU value, that is, we respect and embrace pluralism, meaning in this building you get to be you and honor and cherish your beliefs, and this person gets to be themselves and honor and cherish their own personal belief. That's part of Unitarian Universalism. We're all under an umbrella and value pluralism. So the year was 1519, shortly before the Spaniards arrived in what is now Mexico. The fierce tribe called the Aztecs ruled the land in what is now ruled the land and the subordinate indigenous people. I am going to hack Spanish words today or native words. I'm going to say these people written, it's Nuatl. That's what I've heard, how it's pronounced. It probably is pronounced some way, so forgive me for those of you who know better. Let me know after service if you've heard this word pronounced differently. But the Nuatl people were the indigenous people. They were the worker bees. That is, they were the common folk. When Cortez arrived, here's your 5th grade history lesson this morning, there wasn't a huge fight. You see, the story goes that the Nuatl people thought Cortez, with his blonde hair and blue eyes, was the indigenous god known as Huatzicotl. And this is a stone image on the next slide of Huatzicotl. Here he is. It had been predicted earlier that Huatzicotl would arrive to save them from the Aztec rulers. They were right, and they were wrong. Cortez did fight the ruling Aztec tribe, but he was not the god they were seeking to set them free from the ruling Aztecs. Indeed, Cortez and the Spaniards became the new rulers. At the time of the Spanish conquest in 1519, there was unrest among the Nuatl population, who were dominated by the Aztecs. With a strong military force, the Aztecs were the ruling aristocracy of the region. Quote, they were hated and feared by the subordinate groups, many of which felt that the Aztec obsession with human sacrifice had totally perverted the indigenous religion. That's a quote by a well-respected Jeanette Rodriguez, who's done a lot of research on the history of this image. But when the Spaniards arrived, many of the Nuatl people felt that Cortez was God because of that earlier prediction, that the Nuatl would be liberated from the Aztecs. Apparently, Cortez fit the description, but that's not how it worked out. Cortez arrived and was intent upon acquiring gold for Spain. He was also there to save souls for God, and this is where one of the major differences between the two cultures became apparent. The first one pertains to the idea of salvation. The Nahuatl people suffered massively at the hands of the Christian Spaniards, who were appalled at the number of human sacrifices performed by the Aztec and the Nahuatl people. So the Spaniards understood that salvation came through the sacrifice, death, and resurrection of just one person, Jesus Christ, which meant that one person dies so all may live. For the Nahuatl, sacrifice meant that many had to die to ensure that the one, the sun god, would live. Think about that. One person dies, everybody lives. In the other culture, many people die so that the one God lives. The Nahuatl, governed by the Aztecs, believed in the salvation of the group rather than the individual. There's some research that implies a growing number of Nahuatl called into question the ongoing practice of human sacrifice offered to this sun god by the Aztecs. Now, regardless of whether or not the Nahuatl were against massive sacrifices, of greater importance is to understand how the two cultures, Christianity and the religion of the indigenous, regarded sacrifice in general. Cortez and his men viewed the Aztec and the Nahuatl approach as barbaric. Even today, some might agree with the Spaniards. However, one could argue that when we, our country, send our people to another country to fight a war, we are affirming the belief that Americans are sacrificing their lives so that others might live. Now, I'm not saying this to disregard Americans' practice. I'm saying this to point out that judging another culture is not helpful, and taking a moment to try to seek understanding. Could this idea be a contemporary version of an understanding of sacrifice that requires the death of many? It is difficult to view the ritual of another culture when one can't share the same looking glass or perspective from which to peer. We will never know what the Aztecs and the Nahuatl were thinking. We will never know what the Spaniards were thinking. But this is from all of the research that's come out from some of the writings and journals that have come across. We can have an inkling. Another major factor that resulted in much destruction at the time and violence by the Spaniards upon the indigenous involved the differing languages. The Nahuatl language was comprised of complementary unions of two words or symbols. Each pair expressed one meaning that communicated thoughts and feelings. For example, the world was expressed as heaven, earth. The human person as face, heart, or presence and determination. And God was expressed as night, wind, the invisible and the untouchable. The language of the Spaniards and of the indigenous people were so entirely different that it impeded effective communication. So additionally, the Spaniards believed that truth resided in a faith based on words, whereas the Nahuatl experienced truth as it was revealed through imagery. This is another one of Rodriguez's statements. The Spaniards believed that through a process of abstraction, the intellect was capable of obtaining truth and communicating that truth through words. In contrast, the Nahuatl believed that only the heart was capable of obtaining truth. Words were not enough. Before the arrival of the Spaniards, the Nahuatl had numerous images and symbols to express and define their faith. During that conquest, the Spaniards destroyed everything containing Nahuatl imagery because they understood the images to be false idols or gods. When it came to the private ownership of land, there was also a great clash between the cultures. The Christian or Catholic Spaniards felt that space, earth, had been given to humanity by God, and that humans had a right to claim it, to use it for their own good. The Nahuatl people held space, earth as sacred, believing that it belonged to the gods and not to them. They understood that humans were to live in harmony with the land, whereby the Spaniards believed that it was here to be claimed as private property. Now, finally, the two cultures viewed women's role in society differently. Cortez's conquest was devastating to women in the indigenous culture. The arrival of Cortez, after that, before the arrival of Cortez, the women participated in important areas of Aztec life, war and religion. During war, they carried water, and they were cooks. Women also participated in the religion of the Aztecs. Their studies began very early in life, and they were educators in temple rituals, of the priesthood as well as the area of midwifery. With the arrival of Spaniards, native women who had once reigned as goddesses now wore the facial brands of slavery. They were raped and beaten at the onset and traded as gifts by the Spaniards. Finally, they were subjected, and this is really important, they were subjected to the imposition of a single male Christian god from a monotheistic tradition. Women lost their importance with the arrival of Cortez and Catholicism. So think about it. If you were a Nahuatl woman, you had this imagery of many gods that was there to support you, and now that's gone. For 12 years, the Aztec and Nahuatl people suffered under the occupation of the Spaniards. The mother church in Spain, so it's been written, became weary for the natives to accept the new religion. They were tired of all the fighting. This is when Our Lady of Guadalupe entered the picture. According to tradition, and this is pictures of the story that are on this framed piece here. According to tradition, on December 9th, 1531, a middle-aged former Nahuatl man who was converted to Catholicism was on his way to a church outside of town for morning mass. He passed by Tepeyac Hill and saw the Virgin Mary coming toward him. He fell to his knees to worship her. She instructed him to have the bishop build a church on Tepeyac Hill. When he arrived at the church, he said, "Oh my gosh, I met Mary. She was coming to me." And they said, yeah, go on your way. And he said, "She told me to have you build a church." And they just kind of ignored him. The next day, he went past the same location, but he had no time to speak with Mary, who appeared again, because he had to find a priest to come to do rituals for his dying uncle. So he went around to the other side of the hill to avoid her, and she came to him anyway, saying his uncle would be healed if he would go back and tell the bishop to build this church. So he promised to return to her at a later time. Then, when he saw her again on December 12th, she told him to pick roses. Now, this is very out of season. Roses, different kinds of roses were out of season. So, yet here they appeared. She told him to pick all these roses and put them in his cloak and take it back as proof to the bishop. So Juan Diego met with the bishop, and when he presented them as instructed, the roses fell out of his mantle, and beneath them was this painted image. So the story goes. Our Lady of Guadalupe Church was built, located on Tepeyac Hill, and then finally, this is the framed tilma that's supposedly from Juan Diego's simple cloak. So today, if you want to see this, they have this walkway that moves. So you can't stand there and stare long. You can get on it and it moves you across so the next person can see. It's quite interesting. Now, most research implies that the piece was created by someone from the Catholic community who exhibited European influence in painting style. It might have been created or commissioned by a local Catholic bishop who watched the indigenous people struggle. Could it be that he embarked on an endeavor to create the image and the story in order to help the indigenous people along in their journey to embrace Catholicism? Or one might ask, was it created by an indigenous individual who wanted to uphold the lost religion? The lost religion, you're saying, where do you see the lost religion in this? Some Catholics will argue that it was divinely created by God and not touched by human hands. So if we can go back to this image here. There are visual elements related to the piece that touch upon both faith traditions. For example, the tassel on Mary's dress, I think this one, it's either black or blue, implies that she was with child. The flower located on her belly revealed to the Nahuatl that she was likewise also that she was pregnant. At first glance, a Spaniard might have viewed Mary's hands as being arranged in a posture that denoted prayer in the Western tradition. To the indigenous, the hands were not positioned in the style of prayer, but in an Indian manner of offering, indicating that something would come from the image, from the mother. Finally, the face was painted with a dark pigment. This is interesting, isn't it? A dark pigment because the Spaniards were dark and the indigenous were dark. There are the elements associated with the cosmos and the gods and goddesses of the indigenous of the region before Cortez' conquest. The stars, and it's hard to see, but you'll take time afterwards. The stars on the woman's robe appeared to refer to the luminous skirt wrapped about the feminine aspect of Amatotl. This is another Nahuatl god. The golden rays are said to have expressed the power of the sun and the, quote, the presence of the sun god, Quetzalcoatl. Either the woman was an Aztec divinity because royalty and representatives of the deities were carried on the backs of others. And on this piece, you'll see the half moon and Juan Diego at the bottom holding her up. Or if you were Catholic or Christian, it was Virgin Mary who was being carried on the back of an angel. So it's easy to see that depending on the community from which the viewer was located, the woman might have represented the Virgin Mary in Catholicism or the fertility goddess Tonantzin from the indigenous culture. Now, I consider this ambiguity of who she is as one of the qualities of the image that makes it so powerful. The ultimate strength of visual art is its ability to speak to a broad community of differing individuals. So the Our Lady of Guadalupe image is everywhere in Mexico and much of the Southwest area of the United States. It's in homes, churches, offices, stores, on wallets, on purses, on the side of buildings. It's on boots. It's on belt buckles, inside this bottle cap that you see up here. It's statues and more. Perhaps some of you have seen this image before. She appears on bumper stickers and automobile windshields. She is near to the hearts of many who view her as an image of strength and yet a reminder of lost ancestry. She represents, quote, the maternal face of God. These are the qualities associated with the figure that even a religious humanist can embrace. However, some segments of the Catholic community have attached new meanings to this old image to address contemporary issues, and I know over time things change, but this kind of troubles me. The composition is blown up to a grand scale, 8 foot by 6 foot, and paraded around hospitals and Planned Parenthood centers. And as I understand it, some Catholic clergy say the image proves that God is on the side of those who adopt the contemporary right to life stance regarding abortion. Now, regardless of how anyone feels about the issue of abortion, I'm troubled that a present-day community reinvented the image for its own purpose and distorts it. What it was, its original meaning, which was to bring two cultures together. After a great deal of research, I came to understand that the primary earliest message was to help these two communities envision a new life in the form of a combined community of believers. So another concern I have is the reproduced images brought to the bedside of some sick and infirmed individuals in hospitals. I'm troubled by the idea that they bring the image to a person who's in the hospital and tell the person, if you touch this image, you will heal. And of course, we know what that sets up. When a person doesn't heal or they die, then the implication is they didn't have enough faith. That troubles me that this would be used to distort a meaning. As a humanist, I can't affirm that by merely touching a piece of art, the Christian God will reach down and heal a true believer, and yet I am open to the possibility that I cannot know everything. I am not a product of the old humanism that was closed to pondering about the mystery of unexplained occurrences in life, but I am the newer form that is, quote, open to wonder and mystery and transcendence. We can admit that there are limits to what human beings can know and understand, and that even things we think we understand can still call forth awe and wonder in us. So regardless of where and how she appears, Our Lady of Guadalupe reveals a sustaining truth. She is a symbol with a message that, like other forms of artistic expression, such as poetry and song, cannot be expressed in any other form. Within Unitarian Universalism, where I stand in a puddle of humanism, there is the desire that I beg for a unity of purpose. It is manifested in the commonly spoken covenant to seek truth in love. The story is about a Unitarian Universalist who understands that embracing pluralism, a UU value, whereby differing beliefs can reside within our gathering spaces, can be messy. Not quite as violent as what we've observed this morning in this story, but it can be messy. If nothing else, may our faith journey here involve less judgment and more curiosity, even when something we come across at a random flea market provokes an explosion of thought and maybe some discomfort in the process. May it be so. Thank you for allowing me to journey with you.